The greatest leaders are the ones who empower other people to do the greatest things. And I've always known Randy to lay that foundation.
As we're getting ready to take the runway, this guy said, "You want to do the takeoff?" And I went, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah." He said, "I'll talk you through it." And I went, "Are you kidding me?" He goes, "No, I'll talk you through it." And I went, "Okay." And I did the takeoff, and as soon as I felt the airplane break the ground under my authority for the first time in my life, guess what? Every one of those childhood visions came flooding back to my brain and to my experience and to who I was. And I turned to him about 15 seconds in the air and I said, "I know what I want to do the rest of my life." So the first defining moment in my life was that takeoff with that instructor. And that week, I applied to go back to NC State College, decided to get my degree in applied math and physics, and go through ROTC to try to continue a career in the military.
1955, winds are calm, runway 31 right, cleared for takeoff, contact
And I graduated from high school, and there were some things that I struggled with because I didn't ever have a real good model of what a good man was, what a good leader, what a good husband might be, what a good father might be. I just never had that. And I never had anybody actually model anything for me, but we all went to the beach, and there was one time where we were sitting on the beach, and it was just he and I. And there were some clouds out there. It wasn't raining, but it wasn't like bright and going crazy or anything like that. And he walked up to me and he said, "So Randy, what do you want to do now that you graduated?" And I found it interesting that he asked that question because it's the first opportunity I've ever had to experience somebody that comes to mentor a little bit when they have an opportunity. Not telling you what to do, but asking you the right questions.
As a cancer patient, many of the leadership traits that Randy passed to me, I realized as I got deep into my cancer and had a relapse that I had to start becoming a leader. I had to start being servient. I would come into treatments prior to that. I'd come in, do my time, bundle up, barrel out of there, and I was not part of the environment. The second time I was diagnosed, it hit me like a freight train. But some of Randy's leadership traits reached into me, and I said, okay, I have to change the way I am. I have to be servant not only to my fellow patients, but also the medical staff, the surgical teams. And by showing being a servant to others, by showing being a servant to the cause that I was in, the medical teams rallied around me, patients rallied around me. And because of that, I'm now standing here today. I owe these leadership opportunities to Randy Swaim. Randy, thank you for being a great friend.
V1, rotate, V2. Positive rate, gear up, gears up, lap retraction speed.
We got a phone call from some of our squadron mates and they said, "Hey, they got our assignments, everybody show up at the squadron." Okay. And I wanted to go to F4s and I wanted to go to electronic warfare training. We show up at the squadron and the squadron commander is there and he's got the whole list of all the members that are graduating and he's going down the list to tell where you're going next. And he got to my name and he lost his place on the page. So he goes, "Lieutenant Swaim." And inside me, I'm going, "Come on," kind of thing. And he looked at me and then he found it and he goes, "TAC Fighter EWO." And I went, "Oh, my dream, my dream."
I met Randy about, 8 years ago in 2013. I went to a life coaching training. I was in my bachelor's degree program for Christian counseling, and he was the instructor. I learned to kind of accept who I was and how best to use it. He taught me about the right question at the right time. It's better not to just tell someone something that they need to know. It's better to ask them and let them come up with that answer themselves.
One of the things she also did is she had a great grandbaby that was stillborn. And I think that rocked her world. So I think all of this caused her to just give up. And she sat down one time and she said that she had to leave. And I went, oh man. And it was about 2 days before I knew she was going to leave. It was a Saturday that she was going to leave on. She was going to have some people come over and pick up her stuff and move and everything. But about 2 days before that, one of the things that I told her is I said, I want you to understand something. I'm not saying you have to, but even if it's 10 years after the fact, if you think that the divorce was not right, if you think it was a mistake, all you got to do is let me know. She didn't say anything. And what I started doing is about every month I'd send a few $100s to the church, because when she left, she said she needed nothing from me and all this sort of stuff. So I sent money to the church and let the church send her checks every month. And make a long story short, she, on the last check, the pastor's wife kind of handed it to her personally. And she said, the church probably needs this more. And she looked at her, and I'm just quoting exactly what the pastor's wife said. She said that she looked at her and said, the church is not out one penny. And I said, because every check we've sent you was voluntarily donated to the church by one person and earmarked for you. And she said, my ex went, what? And then she looked at her and said, who did that? And my pastor's wife said, Randy did. And she just went, wow. And then she expressed appreciation for it. And unfortunately, she passed away about 3 weeks later. And so the commitment I made to God at that one point, I understood what leadership is. Because you know what? When you're talking about leading your family or leading your team at work, there's times where it's not dependent on what you'll get. It's dependent on what's right. And are you doing what is right? And that was a big defining moment for me, because I brought to bring everything that God had showed me in my life and brought it over to my personal aspect. And that all happened in probably 5 minutes. And it made the difference for the next 9 years.